Hi folks, welcome back. This is the second part in my two-part series on building a small, simple country or Amish style table. In the last video, we looked at some of the design criteria or restrictions that we had to work with, and then we jumped right to milling up the basic components. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to machine the mortise and tenon joints for the table, and we're going to start with this lovely old Wadkin MF chain chisel mortiser. Then we'll jump right to the Wadkin EQ shaper with a sliding table attachment and the Whitehill Tools large combi head, and we're going to machine the tenons on the ends of the rails. Now the reason I do it in this order is because I only have limited tooling for this machine, and what I want to do is match the tenons to the tooling, because with that setup you can basically make any tenon thickness that you want. There are ways around that with a limited selection of tooling. You can basically make any mortise you want. But this very simple approach to it works just fine, and that's how we're going to do it today. This combination chain chisel mortiser has been a huge asset in my shop. This one came out of a trade school and it was never really worked very hard. So it's in great shape, and fortunately came with a fair amount of tooling because that's expensive. So I use it in millwork and furniture making, but also in some of the smaller members of timber framing jobs. So if folks are interested in this machine, want to learn a bit more about it and what it can do, just let me know in the comment section. Maybe I can do a short video just on this machine. At this stage of the machine work, this is where having those extra test pieces really pays off. So I'm going to mill the mortises in all the legs right off the bat though, because their location on the legs doesn't really have to be super precise. So as long as they're visually close to the design we know that works, it'll be fine. So when it comes to test fitting the tenons though, what I'll do is I'll use the tester legs just in case in the process of getting it right it ends up getting marred or beat up a little bit. At least I'm not doing that with the leg that's actually going to be used in the final piece. So you notice I actually reset the plunge depth here to achieve the haunched portion of the tenon, just for the heck of it, because it doesn't really take a lot of time on this machine. Then once they're finished, I'll set the 4 good ones aside and then move on to setting up the shaper for tenoning. So my tooling of choice for tenoning is the large combi head from Whitehill Tools that I've talked about a number of times. And with this older style of spindle, I have to actually swap out the spindle for a stub spindle in order to flush mount it. With many of the newer machines though, this step isn't really necessary because Whitehill designed the block to work seamlessly with modern securing systems that are found on most newer machines. But for my old school cool machines, I had to actually swap out the spindle. So some more advanced modern shapers will use integral sliding tables or side-mounted carriages for tenoning. And even though this Wadkin EQ is sort of legendary in a lot of circles for the quality of build as well as the quality of bearings, it's a very simple machine, so I use an add-on tenoning carriage for tenoning. It's a good bit more than 100 pounds, so these days, after dealing with some herniated discs in my back, I install it in a couple separate lifts. So after getting it close to the rim of the cutters, what I'll do is a quick cut to mark the projection limit and then do some quick calculations to determine the height settings, erring on the side of leaving the tenon a little bit fat just so I can sneak up on the perfect fit. So though you can buy jigs for this, I find just using one side of the split fence for your depth stop is very easy. It's designed to be really finely adjusted, so it works really well for that. Then it's just a matter of guarding up and making the tenon on that test piece. So back in the small shop, I used the cabinet saw and the bandsaw to remove the material to form the haunch. So this, of course, could have been done in the shaper as well. It's important to remember that the fit just isn't about the thickness of the tenon, but we also need to check that the shoulder is 90 degrees across the piece. So everything was fine, and I just proceeded on to mill up the rest of the tenons. Over the last few years in my shop, using the combi head this way for milling tenons has always given me excellent results. It's true that dual tenon disc will allow you to form both cheeks and shoulders at the same time in one pass, but that's a whole additional set of tooling, and they're very large cutter heads that demand different guarding and a fairly heavy machine. That outlay can be sort of hard to justify, especially if you already own a block that's giving results as good, and if you're not making tenons in that way in a production environment every day. I'm also a timber framer, so I just couldn't help myself and decided to peg the tenons. So I started with drilling the mortise members before tapering the legs. Just for the heck of it, I decided to draw bore the pegs, which is a common timber framing technique to help ensure the joinery stays tight over time. So I dry assembled the unit and then used the same drill bit with a bit of Sharpie on the very end of it to mark the location of the peg, so when you pull it apart you can offset the hole towards the shoulder a little bit. This pulls the joint together when you drive the peg in. And after the glue is cured, I use the flush cutting saw to trim the pegs. And then a razor sharp chisel to trim them down flush. I prefer this to trying to sand them flush, which just generally doesn't work out very well. So a really light and careful sanding on that top worked out really well. I was able to even out the patina a little bit, but still leave a lot of the character. So after damp clothing it to remove all the dust, I used a finish I've been trying out a fair amount lately. It's a water-based alkyd varnish by M-Tech that goes on easily and is probably the most durable water-based finish that I've used. It warmed up at the top a little bit, but I was certainly happy with the results. So I always use buttons to attach my tabletops, but since getting the domino, I've been looking for an excuse to try an idea I came up with. So instead of using the adjustable groover and the shaper to make slots on the apron, I used the domino and made sure to position it so it's exactly one domino thickness away from the edge. Then to make easy buttons, I glued a shorter domino on top of the other one. And when the glue cured, I pre-drilled them and voila, quick and easy buttons. So in fairness, I usually make a large batch of buttons all at once, which probably translates to a little bit more of a professional approach to it, but also less time per button. But I'd run out of my stash and this approach worked out just fine. Well, that about wraps up this little job. The client has seen a few pictures of this and loves it and is going to come and get it tomorrow. It's a lot of fun going right back to the very basics and doing a really simple project like this. Kind of reminds me of back when I was first starting out furniture making. But we're on to the next job already. The next job I have is a solid Western red cedar exterior door for a client who is long overdue for having their door replaced. So Whitehill Tools in the UK are grinding me some knives for that job. They are still in operation at a reduced staff, but they're going to be able to get me those knives, which is great. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and ask any questions you might have. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.